Grazie, grazie, grazie. Hey, this is really Zoom Gali Gali.
How are you, Diman? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Looking forward to starting in a few minutes. This is it, the real thing. Where's David? Can you hear me? Check, check. David, can you hear me? David Lazarson, can you hear me? David, check, check. David Laz? Ah, sorry, I muted you. Watch on your end. Yeah. You want to plug into the internet? I hear you. Oh. What not? I'm gonna unmute you for a second. Check, check.
Hello, hello. All right, hello, hello, check, check, check.
Okay, I'm moving it out. Okay.
You want to make me co-host?
All right, let's do a little mic check, mic check. Can you hear me? I don't hear you, Gali.
Hear me now. Check, check.
Yeah, good, good. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. What are you drinking, kombucha?
It's lemon and ginger tea that, woo, and honey. Oh my God, it's got a kick and a half. How was that smoothie? That smoothie was good? Oh, I don't hear you, Gali, but that's okay. I guess I'm not supposed to.
Are Richard and Paul are coming on?
Yeah.
Were they? I just want to make them, okay, I guess I'll see that in a minute. I want to see them first, if that's okay. Welcome to Zahava Krevsky, the wonderful Zahava Krevsky, our dear friend. Okay, beautiful. Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Yochanan Friedman, all the way from the beautiful Santa Cruz. How are you, Rabbi Friedman?
Doesn't take the evidence into consideration.
Beautiful to see you.
It makes believe that emes is not important. What's important?
Beautiful. Okay. Robert, just let me know whenever Richard's on the call. Richard or Paul.
If you don't mind, that would be awesome.
Hello, hello, everyone. Thank you all. Check, check, check. How are you guys all today? Thank you all for joining the call. We're very, very grateful to have so many incredible Chabad houses from across the northern region of California. And we're very, very, very grateful, of course, to Dr. Laz and Project Cure for coming out during these intense times. And we are going to bring some light, bring some more energy, bring some more unity, increase the peace. And we have an incredible group of people. I'm sure there's lots and lots of us from all around the world, but primarily from Northern California joining this call. I firstly want to give a huge shout out to the collaborators and coordinators of tonight's event, Chabad Noye Valley, Chabad Contra Costa, Chabad Midpen, Chabad Novato, Chabad Emeryville, Cole Valley. We have Shel Goldman, Yael Schvalter, Yankee Bell from El Cerrito, Rabbi Yochanan Friedman from the beautiful Santa Cruz, Rabbi Yosef Marcus, as well as Rabbi Zaklos, all the way from Vacaville. So thank you all for joining. Really, really incredible. Before we start the call, I'm just going to put on a quick 2-minute video. And as the video goes on, we will introduce Dr. Laz. One moment, I will share that video. And really an incredible turnout tonight. Really very much looking forward to hearing from all of the presenters.
They're making music with a mission. Check out those guys. They're having a lot of fun there. He's an educator and band leader that's been making a difference for decades, and now he's right here in South Florida. The band Dr. Laz and The Cure is on a mission, teaching peace, love, and respect.
It goes F flat into the B flat.
I look upon our job as musicians as really sort of being social activists and sort of lighting everybody's lamp who's out there.
David Lazarson, a.k.a. Dr. Laz, is an Orthodox Jew. Not exactly your typical rapper.
See communication across the nation. Let's all sit down.
It's a stereotype breaker. Maybe at first they're just kind of dumbfounded, but then I think they start digging it.
He formed the group in the 1990s after the race riots in Brooklyn, New York. A fatal car accident involving a child led to 3 nights of terror when racial tension exploded between Orthodox Jews and African Americans. 3 people were killed in the violence, and Dr. Laz decided to take action.
I felt that if we could play music together, then that's a huge visual statement to all the people who feel like, oh, these guys are enemies, these guys can't get along.
His effort was so successful that Showtime made a movie featuring Howie Mandel as Dr. Laz.
Representing Project Cure.
Now, 20 years later, Dr. Laz and The Cure continue their mission of peace, performing here in South Florida. Saxophonist Kurt Wyndham says music is a universal language.
My culture is a little bit different. How I deal with that, anytime you can learn something, I think that's a step in the right direction.
A step in the right direction. Dr. Laz also teaches music to special needs children at a Broward County school, and he has created a special needs choir with youth of mixed abilities. You can see Dr. Laz and The Cure perform this Sunday afternoon on Lincoln Road in Miami Beach.
Thank you, Dr. Laz, for joining. Without further ado, of course, Dr. Laz will need no introduction, but I just wanted to, we go a very long time back, and an incredible individual. So Dr. Laz, in addition to Dr. Laz, we have an incredible amount of other talent on this call. But Dr. Laz, why don't you first say hello, introduce yourself to everyone, and you can introduce as well your good friend, Richard Green.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. And thank you, Rabbi Yigal. We go way back. I knew Gali when he was about this big. No joke. And from the time Yigal was just a young little baby, he became very good friends with our son, Rafi, who I think may be joining us tonight. So it's a pleasure to be here. And we get lots of nachas from you, joy and pride, and seeing all the great things that you do, and how you your love and concern for not just for the Jewish community, but really for all of humanity. And so keep up the good work, and thank you to all the Chabad houses who have joined us tonight. It's a credit to all of you that you're tuning in, and I want to give a welcome to my partners in positivity, not partners in crime, but my partners in positivity, all of the Project Cure people, my co-director, Brother Richard Green, who will soon be sharing some words with you. Always words of wisdom and inspiration from my brother Green. I see TJ is on. Thank you, brother TJ, for coming. TJ and Yudi were our youth leaders back when we started in 1991. They were all of 16 years old then, and a very courageous thing that they did by joining Project Cure and really having to face a lot of different flack from the various communities, but they stood up to it, and they realized that being positive was the way to go, and they became incredible role models. I want to welcome Reverend Chandler and Zahava, our keyboard player, and whoever else is here from Project Cure. I really can only see one screen at a time, so I will turn it back over to Rabbi Yigal. And I just want to say, when Yigal was growing up, we used to sing to him all the time, Zoom, Gali, 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 Zoom, Gali, Gali. This is really Zoom, Gali, Gali.
Okay, so Dr. Laz, I first wanted to maybe perhaps we could go back a little bit in time. You can tell us a little bit about yourself, and particularly, of course, what we're going to be addressing today is something that goes back to the 1991 riots, where there was a tremendous amount of tension between the African American as well as the Jewish community in Brooklyn, New York. And I understand that you and your colleagues in Project Cure really made that happen, where the conversation wasn't exactly happening, and you brought it together, and you really had a powerful impact on thousands upon thousands of people, which still today really has that resounding impact. And I just want you to, I don't see Richard on the call yet. Oh, here's Richard. I'm going to unmute Richard, and I'm going to start off firstly as a disclaimer that tonight's call, we are primarily going to be focusing in on we are looking forward to focusing in specifically on how you guys went into those difficult times back in the day in 1991, how you resolved those issues. And of course, this is something that is powerful in today's time, and the idea of promoting peace is very powerful as always. So if I could pass the mic to Richard Green, if you can discuss a little bit what was going on in 1991 during the Crown Heights riots, and if you have any, how you guys got involved initially. Richard, are you there?
Richard needs to unmute. Now, my brother, you got to unmute your screen there. There you go.
Muted?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Welcome, Richard.
Yes, how you doing? How's everybody out on the West Coast? We are in this moment right now in history, which is so ironic that we're having this discussion tonight, and we're seeing what's happening around the nation. And we were sort of embraced each other in terms of the work with Dr. Laz at a time in Brooklyn when we were seeing a lot of tension between the two communities. As you mentioned, the tragic car accident that took the life of young Gavin Cato, and then subsequently the stabbing of Yankel Rosenbaum, and the difficulties that followed those nights out on the streets of Crown Heights, where people were all out there, a August night, attempting to make some sort of sense out of no sense, because what was happening with the people in the streets is most of it was misinformation. They weren't aware of the laws involved with the car accident, and they began to want to take things in their own hands. And
Sorry, Richard, if I can interject, can you elaborate on the car accident and the subsequent events that followed? If you could
Yes,
just
the
give us a little
car
bit of a timeline, as
car
well as,
accident
sorry,
was-
if you can introduce yourself one more time for those where you work and a little
Yeah,
about
the
yourself.
car accident took place on President and Utica Avenue, which is almost, you might say, on the eastern end of Crown Heights. And the car was coming back, was a motorcade coming back down President Street from the cemetery. The Grand Rebbe Schneerson went to the cemetery to his wife's grave. And on the way back, a car coming down Utica swerved to avoid hitting the motorcade, and that the car swerving off the avenue forced the other car from the Rebbe's motorcade to run onto a stoop where the two children and their auntie, the grandmother, was sitting, and tragically the young boy was hit. Both were hit, but the girl, Angela Cato, thank God she was able to manage and survive and doing well. I asked about her the other day, and the family said she lives out in Chicago. And from that point on, I was out there. Mayor Dinkins at the time asked us to meet at the precinct to see what we could come up with, and we met at the precinct, the 71st precinct, which is our local police headquarters. And we gave him, and at that time, Yankel Rosenbaum hadn't died yet. He came from the hospital from visiting Yankel, and while at the precinct is when he got the word that Yankel had passed on. And then from that point on, I was on Eastern Parkway. I first spoke with a group of young Hasidic young men, had questions and wanted to know things that were happening. And of course, I was able to start talking with them. And then from there, I went up to Albany and Eastern Parkway, and there was a serious confrontation between the cops and the youth from both sides. The cops were in the middle of Albany Ave. The Black youth were on one side of the Ave, and the Hasidic youth was on the other side, and they began to go at each other. And the rest of that evening, we were trying our best to stop it from happening. Police officers were hurt, and of course, arrests were being made. And Chief Gallagher, he's been retired now, he was the chief, and we asked him if I could use the bullhorn on his vehicle. The police vehicles have a microphone system to speak to a crowd. And I asked him, and he allowed me to, and I was able to start talking to the young people, asking them to head on home if they could, and we would get to the bottom of this. The next morning, we were able to start the process off. The deputy mayor came out, and that next evening, the mayor came out, and we all were able to start meeting with the community. And that started the healing process between the groups when they saw the leadership coming out and offering their support in terms of whatever it was necessary. They began to feel a way about it, and that's how we started it.
Okay,
And
Richard.
of course, Dr. Laz and I met subsequently to that at a meeting at the museum. I think he probably can give you more details on that. And that's how this whole thing began.
Incredible. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next question. We are going to address it to Dr. Laz. So firstly, how did you guys take a leadership role? Dr. Laz, how did you become more involved? And how did you meet Richard? And also, Dr. Laz, if you could just fill us in as well, a little bit about Richard's occupation, what exactly he was doing at the time, I think till this day, in Brooklyn.
Sure. Okay. Okay, thank you. I had heard about Richard, but had never met Richard before, and seen some of his vans cruising up and down the streets, and just knew him from a distance as a community leader and somebody who was working with the youth in the community. And so I was basically volunteered, I guess you would say Uncle Sam style. It was the first day of the riots when we drove in from my summer camp job, and we had no idea what was going on in Crown Heights. When we first saw all the police all over the place, police in helicopters and riot gear and in vans taped with the windows taped up, you know, not unlike what you're seeing today. And so I remember the first cop I saw, I rolled my window down, and I said, asked them if were they fighting the Jews today at Crown Heights? You know, a little bit of a wise guy, I had no idea what was going on. He told me I should turn around and get the heck out of here. And he said, "Do you have any idea what's going on here?" So I didn't. He said, he told me that there were full-scale riots between the Hasidic community and the Black community, and it was pretty serious. And well, we didn't turn around because I needed to unload my van of all the stuff from summer camp. And I remember later that day, I had seen one of the community rabbis, Rabbi Hecht from Crown Heights. And he, hang on one sec, I just don't want to lose you here. Back to meeting, here we go. Okay, sorry, something just clicked on my screen. So at any rate, I saw him at a payphone on the corner. If anybody remember what a payphone looks like? I know I'm dating myself, but this is pre-cell phone days. So he was standing at the payphone on the corner. I pulled over and I said, you know, I didn't become quote unquote Orthodox, religious, whatever, until I was 23, and didn't start keeping kosher until I was 23, and went to public school my whole life. So I said, I, you know, worked the public school system, and, you know, so if there's anything I can do, I had actually written my first book called Skullcaps and Switchblades about my teaching experience in an inner city school in the Buffalo public school system. And so that book was kind of well known in the, within the, I would say, the Jewish literary scene. And so, you know, I said, if you need any help, no problem. And so he volunteered me. The next day, I had all these requests from people to call in my teacher mailbox at school. And I saw one was from Rabbi Hecht. I called him, what the heck's going on? And he said, yeah, you're going to be the liaison to reach out to the Black community. You're going to meet a gentleman by the name of Richard Green, who was asked the mayor's office to, so the two of us would get together. And I always describe it a little like, it reminded me of West Side Story with the Sharks and the Jets. And, you know, we couldn't meet in the yeshiva. We couldn't meet in the public school because we had to meet in a place that was neutral territory, you know? So we met at the Brooklyn Children's Museum, and looking, I guess the two of us looking very ethnic. Me with my yarmulke, my beard, you know, and Richard with his dreadlocks and the Ankh symbol that he was wearing. And we spent the first hour just talking about our backgrounds, and we're both sort of these hippie, yippie type characters from the 60s. We spoke the different groups that we saw, and I really felt like I was meeting my, you know, my long lost soul brother, my brother from another mother. And so we had no particular agenda, but Richard said, why don't we bring our youth together? Because that's where we felt most of the heat was taking place and most of the conflict. And so that's really how we started. We said, okay, Richard said he'll bring some of his guys, I'll bring some of mine. And I believe it was within a week to 10 days later, we had our first meeting, right, you know, just a couple of weeks after the riots there, after all the disturbances. And that scene was a pretty hot and heavy one. Maybe Richard would like to elaborate more on that. Okay.
Before Richard, I also wanted to, you know, we're going to talk for a moment as well about the things that you have done together as far as bringing the youth together. I know we have Yudi and TJ on the call as well. So I'm going to also ask from them a little bit of some participation real quick. But before we get to Yudi, because I do want to hear from both Yudi and TJ, I want to hear a little bit also about, you know, what caused them as teenagers to get involved. And I know Yudi in particular was very close to the a crime scene that somehow miraculously got him to join the Project Cure. So we're going to hear from him in 1 minute, but I just want to play a quick, cute video from your beautiful, I know you had a documentary on Showtime. So we're going to play a quick 2-minute video.
Don't tell him, Yudi, duh.
I don't even have free time, okay? If I'm not studying for school, then I study Torah.
I think you might want to reconsider. They got these fly-ass honeys there.
Show me what you got, Titus. All live together, so let's stand as one. You love one another.
Sorry about that.
Works.
This interracial community effort is called Project CURE.
CURE stands for Communication, Understanding, Respect, and Education.
What's up, y'all? This is Dr. Laz representing Project CURE. Number 613 coming out of Crown Heights, Brooklyn. We're all here.
Sorry about that. I think I'm sharing the wrong screen over here. Amazon Prime doesn't want me sharing your screens. Okay, I'll try it again. New share. Okay, well, I guess if that doesn't work, it won't work, but let's see.
For one reason, to promote peace and unity.
Come on, come on.
What's up with the love in our community? We got the opportunity to live free, but still we fight.
Anyway, sorry about that. It seemed as if the video from Amazon wasn't playing, but I do want to call upon Yudi and TJ. Yudi, are you on the call? I'll unmute you over here. Welcome Yudi to the call. I can see you over here. Yudi, you're good. I unmuted you. So,
thank you so
Yudi,
much.
I have a question for Yudi. Firstly, I want to hear a little bit about your involvement with the riots. From what we've discussed before, it seemed as if immediately after this motorcade situation happened, and unfortunately there was that casualty. We immediately after, there was a lot of tension amongst the Jewish people as well as the African American community, and as a result, from what I heard, I want to hear a little bit more. I heard that your father in particular was involved, and in fact also potentially got hurt during one of these riots, stabbed if I'm not mistaken, and somehow he encouraged you, which I think is a tremendous act of selflessness. He encouraged you to get involved in Project CURE. So if you don't mind just kind of painting the scene and how you got involved.
Well, first I want to state that at no point did I get involved with the riots. I had nothing to do with it. I was just a bystander that got attacked. I just want to be clear about that. That was an attempt at a joke. I'm sorry. Las man has it. So what happened is that the second night after the second night, I think, second day, I went out to see a friend in Flatbush, and I came back and I met my father in 770. And on our way home, me and my dad were attacked by 20 black youth. We fought them off. My father, being a military strategist, designed the house for attacks. We worked out a whole plan on how to handle the situation, all the exits and all the necessary needs. We figured out that we can bleed the boiler and make Molotov cocktails, 2 of them every 3 minutes. So we were ready for war if necessary, and we were attacked outside the house. My mom pulled me into the house. She said, "I'm not losing both of you in one day." So I went to the porch on the second floor, and I had air support. I was air support at that point, and I was able to lob bottles down at the guys on the floor. And my father, some guys grabbed a garbage bag, and there was actually glass bottles in those days. It was before recycling, and some guy broke the bottle and cut my father's inner thigh, 4 inches deep, 5 inches long, cut a major artery in his leg. And I was raised to be very open-minded and to accept people for who they are, where they come from, learn from different cultures. Growing up, I always have people from different cultures at my table. It was a black woman, as a matter of fact, that saved my father's life. Her husband, her deceased husband, was a police officer that was killed in the line of duty. So was her father. I don't know
if I can interject for 1 minute. So after you or your family personally was attacked, what got you to join Project CURE? Obviously, this is was not such a simple thing to try to, most people would hold resentment versus trying to go out and cure and try to help strengthen those relationships.
I was just about to get there. So this woman that saved my father's life, I could speak to her over the phone, but I couldn't speak to her in person because I had a problem facing her. And it bothered me. And I heard about this group and I wanted to get involved. It took me a little while to get through to Laz and to find out where the meetings were. I went to a meeting. I was carrying a weapon at the time. To go to the meeting, I took an orange juice because it can be used as a weapon. It would burn if it's sprayed in somebody's eyes, but it can also cool me off because I didn't want to upset anybody. My father was very supportive. Both my parents were. They both encouraged it very strongly. They know I needed this, and they were very against generalizing people based on a few very terrible people and very terrible actions people did. Terrible actions people did, because people are good by nature.
So you're saying that, but nonetheless, your father was one of the primary components in you joining the Project Cure, correct?
I wouldn't say it's a primary component. I felt battling inside. My father encouraged it. I wouldn't say primary, but I would say definitely encouraged it.
That's very powerful. And Dr. Laz, if we could pass the mic, thank you, Yuri. Dr. Laz, if we could pass the mic back to you. If you can talk a little bit about that first meeting about the Project Cure, how you and Richard and others got involved, and if you could talk a little bit more about how you were able to bridge more gaps.
Sure. Yeah, okay. So I just want to describe a little bit for everyone what that first meeting looked like. With Richard bringing some of his guys. We had about 50, 60 people there. We sat in a big circle, and the mayor's office and the commissioner, one of the youth commissioners from Mayor Dinkins' office, he physically stood in front of the doorway, would not let any of the media people into the meeting. He didn't want it to be, we discussed it with Richard and myself, we didn't want it to be a photo op. We felt there was some real issues needed to get to and needed to bring out, and we wanted to be real and not just like a silly photo op in a way, and then everybody goes back to stereotyping and hating each other like we did before. So he actually stood in front of the doorway. There were lots of media people there, from the New York Times, from the Amsterdam News, and from these different news stations, and they wanted to take pictures of what was going on. It seemed like such an unusual thing. Blacks and Jews from Crown Heights, in the heat of it all, actually getting together to talk to each other, like, wow. And it really was an unusual thing, which is crazy if you think about it, that something like that has to be considered like so unusual, like so newsworthy. The quote unquote opposite sides sitting down and talking to each other. But I asked Richard if I could do one of my rap tunes that I had recorded about a year or two before, some of the racial incidents that were going on in New York City and Bensonhurst, other places. And I had no idea that it would be used for my own community. And Richard said, yeah, it's a good idea. Let's use that as an icebreaker. And the chorus basically goes, so if you're talking to me relating to another, you can't judge a book by
looking at the cover.
Right, by looking at the cover. So we played that. It was, a bit of an icebreaker. I told the Hasidic young men not to give me away. They knew some of my shtick, and the African American young men, they thought it was Vanilla Ice, which was kind of interesting. But then Richard said, okay, let's open it up. Do you have any questions for these Hasidic young men? Fellas, do you have any questions for these Black teenagers right here? Let's open it up. And so they started asking questions like, what's with the beanie on your head? What's with these white strings at your side? How come you guys all have beards? How come the Jews asking, how come, what's with the dreadlocks? What's with the Ankh symbol over there? And then once we got past these basic questions, which to me was eye-opening in and of itself, it showed that we really didn't know too much about each other, even though we were living side by side in the same community. So Richard, if I can share one of your lines, one of Richard's brilliant lines, he said that with Crown Heights, it was like we were two ships passing in the night, you know, and then you just drift past each other and not too much communication going on. And so once we got past that part, then all the stereotypes came out. How come you Jews are all wealthy? How come you control the police department? How come you control the media? How come you guys are, you know, just hang out in the street corner? How come you guys don't learn? How come you guys are all pimps? You know, all these like crazy, stupid stereotypes. And I just tell you, after 2 hours of this intense back and forth, they met Jewish young men who lived in rent subsidized housing, who lived off, who required food stamps. Some of them came from one-parent families and were far from living, you know, in a home that had, you know, golden doorknobs. And so too, the Hasidic young men, I don't know if Richard remembers this, but one of the teenagers, one of the African-American teachers, he raises his hand. He says, "Mr. Green, I have to go. I have I think it was a violin recital like coming up, and he had to go home and prepare." And another one said he had to leave also because he had a test tomorrow they wanted to study for. And some of the Hasidic young men, you know, went like, "Yeah, right." You know, they kind of snickered and like, "Yeah, right." Like as if you guys really do that. And I remember this, there's one teenager who played the violin. He said, "What, because I'm Black doesn't mean I like classical music?" And he said something like, "I'll bet I know more about classical music and I could read music better than all of you put together." And he was right. So I'll just, you know, I'm going to end with that. That it was a real stereotype breaker. The end of the meeting was also very powerful. And if Paul is on, I'm going to let him tell that part. Okay, the end of the meeting was a crazy thing where we all got together to say a prayer. But if Paul is here, I'll let.
Let's jump to Richard. I don't see Paul in yet, but Richard, if you can explain a little bit more of the activities that you did with Project Cure and the youth primarily. I know you guys did some murals. I know that you guys were involved as well in doing some music at a Knicks game and other similar events. If you could just kind of describe some of the events that you guys were involved with.
You seem to have all of them. Do I have to unmute?
No, you're good.
I'm good. Yeah, you seem to have covered all of them. I think Dr. Laz got us together in a, what's that, a shuva? The ceremony where we ate in the tent, where we ate.
The
sukkah. Yeah. We had a sukkah, which was very interesting. We did a few things. I think we did a Passover piece together.
We did, yeah.
And we did a Hanukkah together, Kwanzaa Hanukkah, where we brought the youths over from both sides for a Hanukkah piece, and Kwanzaa right about the same time. And we played basketball, which was something really different, because everybody said, you know, Jewish guys can't jump, you know, they can't play basketball. And they came out and played and surprised the world out of the youths. In fact, even some days later, when they came to the park on the other side of Crown Heights, they came and played in the park, and was totally surprising to the guys playing against them that they gave them a run for their money. You know, sometimes they'd be coming down the court and their yarmulkes would fall off and they would stop, pick them up, put them back on and keep going. You know, and we did the Knicks together. Once the people found out that this was working, so many different folks began to reach out to us. I think the Giants came out, sent one of their ball players. Was it Harry Clarkson? Came out, and for a long time, people could not believe that we were getting together. USA was at World and News Report. Did a magazine article on us, sent a photographer and a news reporter out. They just could not believe that we were getting together like that. That had never happened before. I can't think of it has. We could not say historically where we've had. I mean, there've always been a relationship between Blacks and Jews. That goes all the way back to Europe, where, you know, the Moors and the Jews, you know, during that time period came together, and there were lot of history of Blacks and Jews coming right through the Depression here in the US. Some of the lawyers who defended the Scottsboro case, lawyers were Jewish. Attorney Leibowitz was known in history for the work that they did. So we had that relationship, that rich relationship, but what we began to do after Crown Heights was something completely different. And it began to really show its effect because, you know, I think it was the great, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad used to say, lead the children and the youth and the adults will follow out of curiosity. And what was happening was the adults began to follow us out of curiosity. I don't think it was, in my community wasn't totally, agreed that that's going to work. And I'm quite sure Laz could say in your community was probably the same thing, that they would not think this is going to work. And before you knew it, parents began to come to our activities. And then in '94, I don't know if you remember, we had a major big event at Medgar Evers College in the parking lot for the day. We took that parking lot over. And it was so beautiful to see the families coming together. Of course, you all have always done social distancing between male and female. And in that big major event that day, we saw the social distancing. The male were on one side of the park, on the piece, and on the other side of the driveway were the females, all Black and Jewish females. So we did a number of things, and I'm thinking about it, that, started it off. We had Robert Kalbach and Richie Havens, the great musician. They heard about us and they came out, and we went from there, and I think we're still going, and I think we could be a great example now as we see the nation at this juncture in history with all the things happening. I think they could look back at us and no need to reinvent the wheel. We already have a wheel that's running. We had a wheel that's running, that's still running, because I'm still getting the visits between the people coming from DC, Operation Understanding. I had them come, the Blacks and Jewish youths came out this past summer from Ferguson. Ferguson, Missouri was the place where that major riot was few years ago. They came out and visited. Operation Understanding from all the way out in your place, out in California, came out to visit. So we're still working on it. It's not so much peacemaking, but it's more peacekeeping, that we were able to keep this peace going. The things that Laz and the others have done, and in fact, I think my son in York did something upstate at one of the colleges. You invited us up to visit someplace upstate. So, we've been doing the works, and I'm very, very excited that it's finally getting the kind of national, well, we've had the attention, but now more than ever. In fact, that was one of the quotes that the youths from Manhattan came over one night to hang out with us. And they say, now more than ever, all the family has to come together. And they did, one of the young men did this rap, and everybody started to join in with it.
Nice. We can't hear you, Gali.
Okay. I had a question for you, Dr. Laz. Thank you, Richard. So firstly, thank you. I think it was very incredible to try to bring the youths together. Do you think that had a larger impact? You did mention that the adults followed. Did it have a larger impact? Did the mayor appreciate what you were doing, or was it instigated by the government, or was it more? How would you kind of explain the impact that it had? Again, there was a tension before then, and then you guys kind of got teens to start conversing with each other, breaking those stereotypes. A, did that have a lasting impression? And B, was that kind of notarized? Did people see it, and was it effective?
Okay, you directed that question to me, Gali?
Yeah, Dr. Laz, take it away.
Okay. Yeah, I would say we had mixed reactions from people, and like Richard said, many participated out of curiosity to see what's this group all about. We did a couple of art mural projects, and people would stop by on their way to work and paint a few strokes, and on the way home from work, getting on the subway. This was right on the corner. We tried to find different places. The only corner we eventually got was actually, by divine providence, of course, was right across from where the car accident occurred, where Gavin Cater was killed, unfortunately. And that ended up being the corner. And I remember that, Richard, you probably remember this, it was vandalized several times.
Yeah.
And then I asked Richard, what should I felt a little bummed out. And you said something, you got to remember, this is a process, not a product. We don't care, like we put up a beautiful mural and, and it lasts for 100 years or lasts for one day. This is a process of bringing people together. And that's what it was doing. And and I think in terms of the, the government officials and politicians, we had lots of people who wanted to, who were very intrigued by what we were doing. The mayor came to several of our functions, and some of our basketball games and some of our music group performances, and was very supportive. There was a lot of people in the Crown Heights community who felt that the mayor was at fault. I think maybe it was a sin of omission, not so much a sin of commission of what he did, but perhaps what wasn't done, and that the riots were sort of allowed to go on for several days. But he was very supportive, and so were many politicians. And I think what it did was, the Alter Rebbe wanted to refer to his Hasidim as lamplighters. He didn't want to use the term Hasidim. He wanted to use the term lamplighters because, that's what you Chabad guys are all about. Where you go, you keep the fires warm. It's a home away from home, and you kindle the fires within every single individual, regardless of size, shape, color, creed, etc. And you really are. You're these like beautiful people on the planet. And so, but I wanted to call our group the door openers, because we were like literally opening doors that we had never, I lived in Crown Heights for years. I never once went into Medgar Evers College until meeting Richard, and then we played basketball over there. And the same thing was true with a lot of Richard's guys that they'd never been in a yeshiva before. That's a whole funny story. I'll save that for another time. But I think also, I would like to hear from, because the guys in the beginning, I think they didn't get a lot of support from some of their colleagues, and they really had to stand up on their own. And I would love for, TJ and Yudi, they were very courageous of them, what they did. For us, we were like the older generation, you know what I mean? And so these guys were living it, they were out on the streets, and yet, of what was going on, they took the bull by the horns and really led by being role models. So I would love for TJ to share some of his thoughts with you and with everybody here.
All righty. Welcome to the call, TJ. I'm just unmuting you now. Great to see you, TJ. How are you doing, TJ?
Hello. Can everybody hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
We can hear you. We can hear you. If you could give us a little bit about how did you get involved, right? It's easy for Dr. Laz and for Richard Green, who's working with youth, right? That's their profession. But a teen on the streets, how are you getting involved with trying to really get involved, but trying to make peace amongst the Jewish people and the other communities? What inspired you to take a leadership role?
Well, it was a process. My journey started actually working with Mr. Green. Okay, we had the Summer Youth Employment Program, and that's basically a program that he had for the inner city youth within Crown Heights and sometimes, I think Flatbush. And in the summertime, it gives young people a job, point blank period. And, one of the assignments was the mural. Now, like everybody else, I've heard about the riots and I was following it on television and everything, but, I was raised that if it ain't your business, don't make it your business. So I watched the initial eruption happen from a distance. So I was working on the mural with Mr. Green, who pulled up to the mural site, and for me at first it was just another location, it was just another site, and Yudi was next to me, and Yudi and I just started talking, you know, and we found out that we had a love of music and we had a love of life. And he let me know that he was part of an organization that helps with, you know, that's easing the tensions with the riots and everything. And he said that there was a rabbi, minister that raps, and the minister raps, and he's looking for another dancer. So I'm about 15, 16 years old at the time, and I'm like, okay, cool. This is a way for me to, one, help people, two, get out of, you know, not, you know, being able to see other areas besides Crown Heights, and three, be a positive impact, because again, my mentor is still Mr. Green, and anything that he endorsed, you know, even to this day, I'm going to support. And he was behind it, you know, he was behind it, and he always told me, never get involved in anything unless you have enough respect for yourself in the craft you're getting involved with to know as much as you can. So it started
TJ,
off.
sorry, TJ, if I can interject. So it sounds like the friendship really kind of solidified between you and Nudie while you were kind of painting some sort of mural. One of the, I guess, Project Cure's ways of bringing youth together.
No, we were painting the mural. You have to understand. Okay. We were painting that mural was symbolic not only to the Caribbean African American community, but in the Hasidic community, but worldwide. That was the symbol for that mural. Okay, that you could, and we were working on that mural together, side by side. I'm doing my part, he's doing his part. I happened to look over at him, he happened to look over at me, and we started a conversation.
So I think that's
just that.
So I think if I could just interject again, I think that's the key over here is the conversation. This is what really caused the friendship to develop, and I believe that's what Dr. Laz and Richard Green were trying to really instigate within the youth, that without that conversation, there is not that much appreciation. And without that conversation, you're not really able to fully appreciate your friend, your neighbor. Richard, if you mind, just kind of how did you monitor these conversations? How did you see these conversations play out even after you were going about your Project Cure activities? Did you see that those conversations had endurance? That the friendships, even outside of Project Cure, would maybe perhaps in separate settings?
Well, you know, the conversations were not always the friendly, you know, kumbaya conversation. It took a little while for these youths. You know, we'd have meetings and they would be shouting at each other across the table, across the room. And they would be talking about things that was real in the neighborhood. You know, you guys are always out there. How come you're all not in school? How come you Hasids don't talk to us? You pass us on the street, you look at us. They will come, and then after a while, you could see it, you could feel it. I mean, there were some young people. I still see these guys are grown men now. I would run into them from time to time in Crown Heights, and they would remind me of some. I know Laz probably remembers some of those. TJ remembers some of those guys who were really anti what we were doing to begin with, and then after a while, they would see us. You know, we weren't backing down. We kept coming back, and after a while, they wanted to join in with the conversation. It was not always, like I said, friendly, but at sometimes they would join in with us, and before you know it, we would be seeing them coming around, coming to meetings. We would see them at games. There's a guy right now, almost 30 years later, that was really adversarial to begin with. And I see him from time to time in the park on a Sunday, and he gives me the biggest smile and the biggest hello. He comes over and greet me. And at that time, you never believed that he would have been one of those, but all these years later, he saw that we were consistent with what we were doing. And I think the consistency is what really got us the attention from the community, from both the Black and the Hasidic community. We had some very rough rough folks in the Hasidic community too, that we convince, and to this day, Glass probably remember Rabbi Shem Tov. He's still, you probably remember him. And every time I saw him the other day, I took a picture with him not too long ago. We used to call him Rabbi Redbeard.
Right.
And Rabbi Rosenfeld. These folks were really not all that anxious to be on this team with us, but we maintained all these years. Like I said, I couldn't believe it the other day. Rabbi Shem Tov said to me, "You still owe me a plaque. Where's my plaque?"
Nice. That's awesome.
Dr. Laz, I
Yes,
had
sir.
a quick, so how would you encourage leaders today, to the best of our abilities? What are some best, I guess you could say, best practices that you guys used back then? Obviously, you see that it worked. There was clearly some sort of very positive outcome in what you guys were doing. Of course, you'll get flack for any good stuff that we do, but it seemed like overall everything that you did was incredible. How would you recommend in our communities, perhaps, and also, of course, not all of us are consider ourselves, of course, we all are. Not all of us consider ourselves community leaders. 1 second. Yeah, sorry. So not all of us consider ourselves community leaders. So how does an average individual try to promote that unity? How do we try to, on a grassroots level, in our sphere, with our friends and family, or with internally, how would you recommend to try to apply that?
Okay, that's a good question, and I think it's not as difficult as people make it out to be. Sometimes we tend to wait for quote unquote leaders to show us what to do, and rather than getting out there and doing it ourselves. And so there's a very simple way. We had just a couple rules as far as listen, even in our own organization, Project Cure, there's how should I put it? We're individuals. And so, and even within our own group, while let's say we all would want to foster peace and to foster respect and, not just tolerance. I always hated that word, I'm going to tolerate you. Oh, wow. Thanks a lot. I'm going to tolerate the Jews. I'm going to tolerate the blacks. I'm going to, tolerate as like the lowest level, but how, we're trying to do more than that. And so I think the way to do it is very simple. And we had two rules. One is that we not just agree to disagree, but we also give validity to the other person and listen, to give them a platform. And so I can probably illustrate this best with an example that happened in Crown Heights when it was hot and heavy. And we had a meeting, Richard will probably remember this. We were at the public school that was across the street from Precinct 71. The meeting was everybody yelling at each other. They're talking like all the hotheads and from all the different communities. Everybody's yelling at each other. The cops said, "Okay, that's it. Everybody get the hell out of here. Everybody out." And that was it. Meeting over. Well, we were on the streets, and me, Richard, and Paul, TJ Udy, we all said, "You know what? Let's just meet right here on the sidewalk. Whoever wants to stick around and talk, let's do it." And so there was a black teenager who was involved with Farrakhan. He was from the Nation of Islam, and he said, "Yeah, I would like to tell you something." And I was like, "Okay." And so he started talking with me, and it went on for about probably about 15 minutes. And like I said, one of the rules of communication was just listen. So I didn't want to interrupt. There were a lot of things I didn't agree with him on, but I just listened. He finishes after about 15 minutes. I'll never, ever forget this my whole life. This was a great lesson for me. And he said, and I said to him, are you done? And he says to me, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, well, I would like to discuss some of the points you brought up." And he said, "Wait a minute, before you do that, I just want to give you a hug." And he gives me a hug. This is a guy from the Nation of Islam, from Farrakhan's people, you know, and he gives me this Hasidic guy in Crown Heights a hug on the street. And I'm like, you know, like, what are you doing? And he said as follows. He said, you're the first white guy that's just listened to me. Because most people, what they do, they start yelling at each other, like what took place in that meeting. So as soon as, you know, he went off, and he was going off on not just whites and on Jews and the whole bit. So I think it's very simple. Like the Rebbe once told somebody who went into him he wanted to arm the Jews in Crown Heights. He wanted to bring weapons into the Jews in Crown Heights. And the Rebbe told him no violence. So he said to the Rebbe, oh yeah, so how you want to make Crown Heights a safer community, a better community? So the Rebbe told him 5 words: say hello to your neighbors. He then spoke to Big Mo, who called me up, and he said, Big Mo says to me, this guy thinks the Rebbe is the most naive person on the planet. That's going to make Crown Heights a better community. But you know what? That's what we were doing. We were at this communication. We decided we're going to start on our own block. And, you know, we're always talking about Mashiach's going to come save the whole world. So the Rebbe was somebody who always thought globally, but the emphasis was on act locally. So I'm going to end with that I think it's as simple as reaching out to somebody who's different than you, somebody who's not in your camp, somebody who's not waving your flag, somebody who you think might be from the other side, somebody you might think hates your guts. Well, you know what? Reach out. Don't kill the person. Don't write them off. Reach out and listen to what he or she has to say. And then maybe you'll see that you have a little more in common than you thought before. Okay?
Very powerful. Thank you, Dr. Laz. Richard, I wanted to also just kind of end off, we're almost done with the call over here, but I just wanted to hear any things that, in fact, I know that we have all sorts of great community leaders as well as even politicians on this call as well. So maybe something you could share as well from a leadership perspective. How would you recommend getting the adolescents in particular to get involved with similar activities? If we were to want to try to recreate, so to speak, something like Project Cure, each in our own individual cities, what would be some pointers that you have?
No, well, I mean, the pieces we used was so great. Was a garden. I don't think Laz mentioned a garden. We took an old abandoned lot on the corner of Union and Albany, and we turned it into a garden. And eventually the owners came back and took it, but we planted an apple tree. And even though it's fenced off now, every season you can go by there and you see apples on that apple tree that we planted this lot with Blacks and Jews. And so many people came by, politicians came by and look at it. But one I'd always remember, Laz might remember, there was a woman in Crown Heights whose house was terribly vandalized during the crises. And we got together. She didn't even know that Laz and I had gotten together and anonymously sent her some money. And to this very day, eventually she found out that we had did it. But to this very day, she still, when I see her, she still offers a smile, you know, or offers a word, because we were able to do that. And today, more than ever, I think we need to make this effort to make people come to each other and talk to each other and help each other to understand what's happening in our nation right now. And it's so ironic that we are doing this program at this particular time, because it's something that if you had saw Crown Heights during the peak days, you were a little guy then, but during the peak days, you kind of remember what's going on right now. The helicopters buzzing over, the lights coming down. We used to call it the hats and bats. All the police officers on the corners now with hats and bats. But at the same time, we got the officers beginning to, we saw one evening some female officers double dutching with the girls out on the block on the corner of President and Troy. So many good things came out. And after Crown Heights, we were over and over and over in different parts of the city, Washington Heights and other areas that had issues. They would always call us up to see how we could help to bring some kind of understanding as to what we do. Sports, music, art. These are the things that young people all are going to do. Doesn't matter if there's blacks or Jews. You know, Doris Mi Fa Sol La Ti Do is the same language in all our languages. And it was so good that we were able to do that. And the last probably know is another rapper. He's real famous now, but he started out doing some work with us, and he's still on the road. Last, who was that other rapper? He got kind of famous.
You talking about Matis? Matis,
Yeah. Yeah, he you know, because he started out, I think he came and did something for us when he first got started.
Yeah, he was young.
And Dr. Laz, if also, if you can kind of tie it in a little bit as well, as far as some perspectives from a Torah-based value, where do you see the, in other words, of course, to some extent, everyone, I think, believes in being a decent human being, but not everyone believes that it's their job to go out and help other people, or try to take a more proactive sense. So do you think this concept of being kind of this leader of peace, is this something that we see clearly somewhere, you know, rooted in the Torah, as well as do you see some element of, if you could also elaborate on any conversations you had with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, with some sort of guidance that he might have shared with you, either agreeing or disagreeing to how you went about doing things?
Sure. Okay. It's a loaded, powerful question. Well, first of all, in my learning, I see the fabric of peace is something that's this integral part of Torah, of Torah study. You know, there's this saying that says, "Eina Torah nitna ela lasos shalom ba'olam." The Torah was given for the purpose of bringing peace to the world. And so it's so interesting. What is peace? So they say that, you know, that the word shamayim, even the word shalom, we have the shin and the mem, and the shin represents Aish and the mem represents mayim. One represents fire, one represents water. It's such a beautiful concept. This is the Hasidic interpretation that what is peace? Peace is not when everybody dresses alike and everybody looks alike and everybody thinks alike. That's being a robot. That's a cult where you lose your individuality. But the beauty of the Hebrew concept of peace, and I think it's something that we try to put into practice, is this notion. What is the word shalom mixing together, the word shemayim mixing together, which fire and water, two opposites. Fire likes to extinguish water. Water likes to extinguish fire. And yet somehow that's what it says. Oh, shalom ben ramav. God makes peace up above and then brings peace down into the world. So I feel like it's just a central theme. Even it says that one of God's name is the word shalom, the word peace. So it's really an integral part of Torah, and that we are, an al tifrosh min hatzibur, you shouldn't separate yourself from the community. Well, what's the community? We're talking about the community of the world. We're not supposed to sit in a lotus position on top of a mountain and divorce ourselves from society. We're meant to be an active part of civilization and to do what we can to improve society. So this notion of tikkun olam is I think it's just in our DNA, and it's in a lot of people's DNA. And so like Yudi was saying, that most people have a sense of goodness to them, and a lot of times they don't know how to bring it out. Perhaps especially in today's society where things seem so polarized, or such hatred, for the other side, quote unquote, and it's very disheartening. And everybody's in different camps, waving their flag, and I belong to this camp, I belong to that camp, and it's tough to. I should say it's much easier now for people to generalize and look at one person. Oh, he's one of them. Oh, she's one of them. Oh, he belongs over there. She belongs over there. There's talk now of, disbanding police departments across, various cities, defunding police departments. Richard the other day, I think, quoted as saying it's a sacred mission. And most cops are good people. You know, you have a few rotten apples. My field is education. I've been teaching full-time for 42 years, 43 years. That's a miracle in and of itself, but we won't go into that now. I've seen a lot of bad teachers. I've seen teachers who have abused kids and they lost their job. Does that mean, oh, we should get rid of the whole educational system? We should get rid of teachers because there's a few bad apples? No, you prosecute those teachers who screwed up. You prosecute those teachers who abuse kids. And so I just wanted to say that there's, you know, people, and it's on all sides of the spectrum, you know, like people lump, you know, people who are protesting peacefully into this, like as if everybody's out rioting and looting, and that's not the case. And sometimes the media just reports, you know, what they want to. A lot of the media comes in from a camp and they just wave their agenda flag. And so
I want to see Richard also, from what I understood, he had an interview with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, with the Chabad rabbi. Is that correct, Richard?
Yes, I got a chance. Laz and I met with the Rebbe and came in and spoke, and he knew who we were, and he asked his assistant, and he gave us $1 if he does, and then he called us back and gave us another $1. And he said to me, from everything you do from this day forward will prosper. I went to Africa. I went to Gambia about 6 months later. And one night I'm traveling and I met one of the holy men on the road. And he said almost the identical words to me that the Rebbe had said to me. And that was like a corroboration of this mission. When he gave me I still have it in my pocket. He gave me his prayer beads, and he said, "That's mine." He was going to a place called Tuba. Tuba is the holy city that they visit, as all the Muslims don't go to Mecca. These Muslims go to a place called Tuba. He was on his way to Tuba, and that was his beads, his prayer beads. He gave them to me, and I thought that was so special. But the same identical words the Rebbe had said to me when he gave Laz and I our blessing was what this young man said to me.
Okay, and Dr. Laz, I'm going to, we're running out of time over here, but I just wanted to share a quick 3-minute video, if technology will allow me to, of during the 1991 riots, where Mayor Dinkins, exactly this is when you guys were doing your stuff, he met with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and maybe right after that, we could go around to Dr. Laz, Richard, TJ, and Yudi, just to give us maybe 60 seconds of takeaway, practical application, or a powerful message that we can forge forward away from this phone call. So I'm just going to share the screen real quick. Okay, are you guys seeing the screen?
God Almighty bless you, have good news, and to use all your influence in the quiet atmosphere in much success.
Well, thank you. I shall do that. And I'm confident that with the good people of all of our communities, we will come together, both sides, we will come together and do those things necessary to protect everyone.
And to forget that is both sides, it is one side, one people united by the management of New York City.
So there you had it. You, Dr. Laz, first you want to just expound on that call, and then maybe give us 60 seconds of inspiration.
I'm gonna go turn it over to the youth first. Let's hear from TJ and Yudi first.
TJ, you're first. TJ, what is your message of inspiration that we can leave this phone call with? Something perhaps practical that we can do to bolster peace and unity amongst all people. I'm just unmuting you now. 1 second. Okay, TJ.
Hello? Okay. So, get to know your neighbor. Okay. Get to know your neighbor. Can't judge a book by looking at the cover. I mean, it's just that simple. You know, have understanding, communicate, understand. See, one of the songs we did was called The Cover. And what it is basically you have the CURE stands for communication, understanding, respect, and education. So you have to communicate to understand, to have the mutual respect, and that's all a process of education. So just if you take those steps every day, you know, you make your life better and you make somebody else's life better.
Powerful, powerful, TJ.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, TJ. So now after TJ, we'll have his good friend, the beautiful Yudi, to share with us as well a quick thought of inspiration. A quick shout out to Krebs from back in Florida, a good family friend of ours as well, who was a very active role in Project Cure. So thank you, Zahava, for joining. Okay, Yudi Simon, or Yudi, take it away, Yudi.
Yes, so I have a very simple message. The fact that every person in this world matters. If you take a few moments and speak to people when you have the opportunity, when I get into an Uber, I put my phone away, I talk to the driver. They say there's 8.5 billion people on this planet. And the name Adam means man, both in singular, plural, masculine, feminine, past tense, future tense. We are all cells in a bigger body. We're parts of a bigger being. And when 2 out of 8.5 billion cells meet, it should be a moment to celebrate. And if we take that time and give the person focus and listen, the world was created with speech. That means there has to be somebody to listen. So if we take the time and listen, we validate other people. And by validating people, we empower them. And by empowering them, we give them the ability to make changes themselves. And so the truth is, the only way we make changes is by listening, by communicating, giving people focus, making them realize that they are something special. By default, the creator does not waste energy. And the fact that you exist is proof that you matter. That's all I have to say.
Incredible. Thank you very much, Yudi. Now, Richard Green, I want to pass the mic to you. And again, thank you for taking your very precious time and joining us tonight. It's a big, big honor to have you on the call.
Thank you.
Okay, let me 1 second. Let me unmute you, Richard.
Thank you very much. Am I unmuted?
You're good. You're good.
Good. Yes, the youths had it all to say, and I'm just going to kind of confirm what they just said. I think it's so important that we begin to see what they're saying in the world that they've been giving to us. We have somewhat shared with them, but they've given us a new world to look at. And I think Crown Heights was the moment in history that allowed us to come together and speak together and learn a lot about each other. And I think from here we became an example, and we're still a shining example to the rest of the globe. And I think the young people, yourselves and others, just have to keep carrying on this torch. It's so, so important because, as we would say now more than ever, all the family have to learn to live together. Thank you. Peace.
Thank you very much, Richard. Very, very powerful words. And of course, as we know, actions speak louder than words. So I appreciate Richard, Dr. Laz, and all the other East Coast people, Zahava, Krepsky, Yudi, and TJ, staying up till late at night, 11 p.m., 11:15 p.m. at night on the East Coast. And I hope in the merit of all of us coming together, that should be enough power for us to take these very powerful messages, and we should all somehow try to translate that into practical application, into some element of action, that tomorrow morning we should wake up with a renewed excitement to meet our neighbors, to get that conversation going, which we saw was so powerful and so important, which continues, of course, to be more prevalent than ever before. And I just want to thank all of our viewers for being on the call. I want to thank all the Chabad rabbis. Really, these guys are very powerful individuals. And I give us all a blessing that we should have the ultimate unity with only good and blessing and kindness. No wars, jealousy, competition. We should only do good things. So Dr. Laz, end us off with a quick verse, a freestyle.
Oh, freestyle. Oh, baby. Okay, can I just say one thing about Richard, so you'll have even a greater appreciation. Okay, you know, TJ said he's his mentor. Richard is one of my mentors, and so is Paul, and really and our youth leaders. I just want to tell you, with that garden in Crown Heights, it was a disgusting, filthy lot with beer bottles and broken glass and tires, and right. You remember that, Richard? It was
it was an ugly lot.
It was a real eyesore, and I kept trying to find out who the owner was to get permission. It would drag on for weeks and weeks. Finally, Richard calls me up. He says to me, "Les, I'm going in Sunday with my guys, and meet me there. We are cleaning this place up. We're going to plant the peace garden. We're going to do some mural projects in the garden, plant some flowers in there." So I said to him, "But Richard, we don't know who the owner is. What if the owner doesn't like it?" And he said to me, "Well, if he doesn't like it, we'll throw all the garbage back in." And so, so to all the Chabad rabbis, you'll appreciate who these guys are. They are people of action and not just words. They don't just talk the talk, they walk the walk. And it's always been a great lesson for me. You know, a lot of times we Jews get hung up in making committees, you know, and then they've got to go to a vote. They go to this committee, that committee, you know, how do they vote? And these guys are just action oriented. Just get the job done. Take care of business. So we're still doing it. I would only add to what all they have spoken so eloquently about. I would just add that it might not be easy to reach out to speak to somebody who might be different than you. But, you know, they say, get out of your comfort zone. Now's the time. Reach out a little bit. It's not so hard. You're on the train, you know, like Yudi said, you're in an Uber or something. Put down the dang cell phone and start talking to the person. You know, you're on the subway, start talking to the person, offer your seat, whatever it is. Wherever we go is where we're meant to be. You know, we're supposed to be there. It's divine providence. So whoever we meet is by divine providence. And we are there, I believe, to serve other people and to bring greater peace and love and joy to other people's lives. So get out of your comfort zone a little bit. You're gonna be happy. You won't believe how broad you can get. And I will end with that.
Beautiful, beautiful. And do we have Zahava? Do we have a keyboard open and out? Maybe we'll do a RESPCT.
I have to get up and move. What do you want? What do you want?
Usually have keyboard will travel.
Okay, well, I can have I got laptop.
Zahava is part of the band and a dear friend of our family as well. So thank you for joining. Thank you for being as well part of Project Cure. Of course, music is so powerful. Dr. Laz, maybe, I don't know how it works. Of course, on Zoom, it always sounds terrible, but somehow we will make it do. Why don't we do a quick spit out a couple of verses? And I unmuted Richard and Yudi and TJ.
All right. Pick your song and I'll just be there behind you.
All right, cool. Well, let's give me a little.
What are we doing first? So I know what we're doing.
Okay, T, you're gonna start us off. T, you said.
That's fine.
I'll just give you. Oh.
We're gonna do two. Okay, she communication. Okay, all right. Okay.
Hey, Dr. Laz, start it over.
Are you ready? Oh, say, can you see? Yudi, you understanding.
I listen to you, you listen to me. We can work things out in harmony.
Respect each other's feelings, respect who you are, respect each other's cultures, and we'll all go far.
Education, a point of elevation to keep on growing even after graduation.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Increase the peace, y'all.
Yes,
increase the peace, guys. Thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Much love.
Much love, everyone. Thank you all for coming. We look forward to seeing you again soon.